Hello everyone, it's 1 p.m. Eastern, and that means it's time to begin another of our monthly CoCoRaHS Weather Talk webinars. Today's webinar focuses on what it takes to become a meteorologist, and we'll be recording this webinar for future viewing on the web. I'm your host, Henry Regis. My normal co-host and Colorado State climatologist, Nolan Duskin, is on the road today, but I'm sure he's out there listening in. Behind the scenes today, running our program, are my colleagues Zach Schwalbe and Noah Newman. We're coming to you live from the Colorado Climate Center here at Colorado State University in Fort Collins, Colorado. All of our Weather Talk webinars are sponsored by grants from NOAA's Office of Education and the National Science Foundation. After our speaker's presentation today, we'll open up the webinar for questions from our audience. We're excited to have with us today an old friend of ours. We go way back, Dave Changnon. Dave's a graduate of Colorado State University and now a professor in the Department of Geography at Northern Illinois University, located in DeKalb, Illinois. Dave got interested in weather while he was in high school. His turning point came during experienced 3 very severe winters during the late 70s in his hometown of Urbana, Illinois. And during these years, Dave took the most difficult courses he could in high school to work on that stuff, and worked several summers on state water projects for the Illinois State Water Survey, and he got some great experience there. Aside from weather, Dave loves golf, gardening, time with his Jack Russell Terrier, Holly. Welcome, Dave. It's great to have you as part of our webinar today.
Henry, it's great to be here with you.
And Dave, you know, as I think back in my days in high school, I got interested in weather when lightning struck my house when I was 8 years old, and always wanted to be a meteorologist, but I really wish I had guidance through my high school years, trying to figure out what to take in college and so forth. For me, it was a career change later on that led to meteorology, but I'm sure for many folks out there, this information will really be very helpful.
Well, no, Henry, I'm really looking forward to this discussion. In a lot of ways, I think I would say that for all of us who are meteorologists, there isn't just one path to getting there. And I think that's probably an important part to this initial discussion as we think about those who are interested in becoming meteorologists, is don't view that you've got to pattern yourself after another individual or after other individuals, that there are many different ways that you can learn and become knowledgeable about the weather and go on and pursue careers in that area. So hopefully I will continue to talk about that range of paths throughout this discussion and thread that into our talk. But that's an important thing to realize, is that if you even look at me as a individual who is now a meteorologist, how I got here is that my undergraduate degree was in actually engineering at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and then I went to graduate school in atmospheric sciences, and that's really where I became trained to be a meteorologist. So again, there are many different paths, and we'll talk about those. So from my perspective, we're all on a journey in our lives, and you know, we're seeking several different outcomes from our journey as we walk on this planet. But for those who are interested in becoming meteorologists, that journey should include several different, I think, important activities and actions as you think about this as a career. And so part of what I want to do today as we look at the overview slide is I want to hit on sort of 3 different phases as I think of them. One of the phases, the initial phase for most meteorologists, is how did you get excited about this field? And what are the things that you can do as somebody, no matter what your age is, but typically the focus point will be at individuals that are working their way up through high school. The second phase will be those that talk about activities related to attending a university. Now, that can be a range of ages. Typically, 30, 40 years ago, we thought about those students as primarily 18 to 22-year-olds or traditional age students. But we have a lot of non-traditional students that are returning back to college who have a real passion for meteorology, may have already received another degree and want to now seek a degree in meteorology. So we'll talk a little bit about them as well. And then the third phase really talks to the last year or two of college as you prepare for graduation and your career beyond the 4-year institution. And so we'll explain how these all sort of overlap, but yet really represent important aspects of your journey. Finally, I'll have a slide where I sort of summarize, I think, some of the major points and the lessons learned, and we'll go from there. So I hope you enjoy the talk this afternoon. Well, meteorology is, I feel like I'm the luckiest person in the world. I'm an advisor in an undergraduate meteorology program here at Northern Illinois University. We have a program where we have about 100 undergraduate students. And I just am always excited about my job, and a lot of my peers, a lot of my faculty member friends on campus always are amazed at my passion for what I do. And I think part of it goes back to the fact that almost every meteorology student that I've ever met in my life, or someone who wanted to be a meteorologist or who is, has always had a passion, a real drive to want to do this, much more so than I've seen in a lot of other disciplines. And this is what makes it really exciting for me as a person who deals with people who come in and explain their passions, what got them interested. And for a lot of people, you experience firsthand an incredible weather event. Whether through a storm chasing event, you saw a tornado or experienced severe hail, maybe a couple inches in diameter, or maybe you were involved in a hurricane, or perhaps a major blizzard in your hometown. These are things that often when we experience them, it just drives us to ask the question of what's causing this? I want to know more about these events. And that generally is a trigger or a point where people literally sit there and say, I want to do something more to learn about this field. So that first event can be there. For some people, though, it's not necessarily an event that triggers this interest or passion in meteorology. Sometimes they're exposed to this subject of meteorology or weather in a class that they've taken in their middle school or high school, or maybe they've had a teacher in one of those schools that has really helped them create a passion in this area. Oftentimes in our lives, to help our passion develop for a specific field, we have to have a mentor, and sometimes those mentors can be people within our community who really push us toward this interest. Finally, a lot of people have become interested in meteorology mainly because in the last 30 or 40 years, visual images in our life have become so important. Whether it's a television show or a movie, and in my age, and I'm talking about how old I am, it was always watching The Wizard of Oz every spring when it was on to see the movie sequence of a tornado. Because at that point in my life, other than seeing tornadoes in a book, I rarely got to see them in an action setting. Then, you know, as we look now more toward where we are now, we've had movies like Twister and other movies in the last 20 years that have generated a huge amount of interest in our field. And so that's been a major step in a direction toward creating this passion. Finally, I think, and this talks to the students today, and really our generation that are high school and college students, is that the internet is probably the focal point for trying to identify or examine different issues relating to our passion in meteorology, whether it's severe weather and storm chasing. A lot of these pictures and images are up on the web. So we have this incredible amount of visual images now that we didn't have 20 to 30 years ago, brought on by the advances in technology, which have, again, inspired a lot of students in their interest in meteorology. Now, let's go to phase one. And again, I'm generally talking about individuals that are approaching high school or in high school. And a lot of times when we go into high school, we don't always know what courses to take. However, if your interest is in meteorology, you'll want to sit down with your high school advisor and say, I want to be a meteorologist. And if they do their homework, they'll be able to come back and say, well, then you want to take as much math as you can as a high school student. That is really, really important. I mean, the fact is that you'll want to work through geometry, trigonometry, pre-calculus, and if you have the opportunity in your high school to take a calculus course, do it. Hopefully, you might be able to get AP credit for that course, and it goes to the institution, the four-year institution that you want to apply to. Or even if you don't, you're getting important background in quantitative skills that you're going to need in meteorology when you get into an undergraduate program. Furthermore, as a high school student, you want to think about taking as much science courses as you can. Take an earth science course, take a course in chemistry or more, take one in physics if you can, because these two different physical sciences are very much related to what we know in atmospheric sciences and meteorology. They will definitely come into play when you take courses in college that focus on different aspects of the atmosphere. Finally, and this is one that most people are often shocked by when I tell them this in either a conversation or an email message, is continue to work on your writing and speaking skills in high school. Take a speech course. Furthermore, you want to take a composition or a writing course every year you're in high school, because I think the key is that we can learn the math and do it. We can learn the science and do it. But if we can be really good in those what I call physical science environments, but if we don't know how to communicate our knowledge to an audience, then in a sense we have limited our ability to move forward in our careers. Because the real part of what we do in any career is our ability to take the knowledge that we've learned and communicate it to another audience. And so continually working on your writing and speaking skills, I think, is important. So as we think about these math, science, English, and speech courses that you're going to take, what are they going to provide you with? Again, they're going to provide you with the foundational concepts and knowledge needed to walk into an undergraduate meteorology program and be successful. Really key to that idea that when you walk in, you understand how difficult and complex some of the courses you're going to be dealing with as an undergraduate meteorology student. Furthermore, these courses in high school will introduce you to important skills. And that word skills is going to be used a lot in today's talk, but that's a very important one to think about. Skills that you'll learn in high school, or at least be introduced to, are things like critical thinking and problem solving and communication. Those are things that these kind of courses are going to really push on you, and you want to pull out as much of that as you can through your high school education. So definitely take those courses in math, science, and English for sure. Moving on. In a sense, one of the things you want to do, besides thinking about coursework in high school, is, and this really goes to anybody who wants to go into meteorology no matter what age they are at this point in time, is to think about activities that are going to enhance your knowledge and I think your passion for the field. I mean, a lot of students that come to our institution, and I think this is pretty much the same across the country, come because they have this interest in severe weather. Well, if you have an interest in severe weather, one of the things I would suggest that you can consider is becoming a severe storm spotter for the National Weather Service. NWS represents the National Weather Service in this case. And they've had the Skywarn program for a long time. That's something you may want to consider. And again, you can be trained as a storm spotter, and through that training, you can get certified to do this. And that's something that I would say would be a neat first step into developing your interest in severe weather. You'll learn a lot about severe weather through those training courses, and that will be a good foundation for you. Something else that you can do that will also help you understand weather a lot more is set up a weather station at your home. This is typically done on the roof of your home, and again, as long as you've got pretty good exposure to the atmosphere, these things will work pretty well. And the range in costs can be fairly significant, so you really have to talk to your parents about doing such a thing if you happen to live at home with your folks. And I think the key here is that one thing that you'll learn is you'll be able to see how the weather changes. I think one thing that most people understand is that the weather's dynamic. We have frontal passages, we have storms come through, we have high pressure, so forth. But when you look at the data, you begin to see how the data, whether it's temperature data or precipitation or humidity data or wind speed and direction data, how they're related to specific weather elements, whether it's fronts or air masses and so forth. So again, having a weather station gives you the chance to learn more about weather on your own, connecting the dots, so to speak. Also, you might want to consider becoming a CoCoRaHS observer in your community. This is a great opportunity for you not to only advance the knowledge of what happens in terms of precipitation and hail in your own community when you have a weather event, but it also allows you to look at the distribution of precipitation events around you, not just in the region of your state, but also across the whole country. And every day when I put in my weather observations for CoCoRaHS, I enjoy seeing how the precipitation events evolve and move across our country. And so this is another way for you to learn and develop that passion. Finally, a suggestion I have is to visit a National Weather Service forecast office. Generally speaking, there's one often near a large city, and you'll want to look on the National Weather Service website to see where one is located near you. If you get a chance, contact them through email or by phone and see if you can come and have a visit. And oftentimes somebody in that office will give you a tour of the office. They may even let you see how they forecast the weather and some of the modeled data that is the guidance, weather guidance information that they use to create forecasts. Or you might want to visit a local television station. Some students have a real interest in becoming a broadcast meteorologist, and if you do, then I would suggest you visit your local television station. Meet your TV meteorologist, and most often they'll sit there and let you sit through one of their weather forecasts in the news show, and also show you what goes on behind the scenes. So that's really, really something you can do. Great. So you're in high school and you're thinking about making a college decision. How do you go about that process? Now, again, as I mentioned, I went through engineering and then got into meteorology as a graduate student. There are a lot of different paths that students can take in an undergraduate program, whether it's in engineering or geography or math or physics or chemistry, that then can go into a graduate level course, a graduate level program in meteorology. My talk is going to be primarily focused at those students who really want to enter into an undergraduate meteorology program. And that's because I teach in one, not only because of that, but I'm an advisor in one, and I think it's important that for students to realize that this may be the best first direct way to do this, to moving toward a career in meteorology. Now, to identify colleges and universities that are near you that offer an undergraduate meteorology program, one of my suggestions is that you get online with the American Meteorological Society, which is our professional society in meteorology. They have a listing of all the undergraduate programs. You can see where they're located. You can get contact information about people who you can talk to at those institutions. And you can find out the number of faculty they have, what their faculty interests are, and what their research interests are, which is important. Once you have this contact information, you probably should try to contact the departments and find out either through a phone conversation or by looking at their website how you can get some more information about their programs, about what kind of courses they offer, what kind of extracurricular activities are associated with their programs, and faculty members as well. Once you've gotten this information and you've been able to identify potentially a subset of universities that you want to go visit, I suggest that you make that choice and make those decisions and make a visit to all the institutions you're interested in. Because I believe that in my own experience that it's that visit and that one-on-one face-to-face discussion with a undergraduate meteorology advisor, which is where you're really going to learn about the program at that institution, and you'll also get a feel for the fit between you and that institution, which is really, really important. So some things that you might want to consider asking when you go on this visit to this university and when you're sitting down to talk to a meteorology program advisor. First one, and I think this is essential, is that you want to make sure that this program that you're looking at meets the standards established for the federal government, again, associated with the National Weather Service, as well as the American Meteorological Society. This is critical. Almost all programs teach to the courses that are required by the federal government, but you want to make sure that they're offered regularly so you can take them, and especially that you can get done in a degree in 4 years and have taken all the required courses that are necessary. So this is a key part that you want to really look at is looking at what those requirements are in the National Weather Service and the AMS. Those are listed on their websites, and you can look at that. Now, does the program teach elective courses? Well, generally they do, and those elective courses that are available are generally ones associated with the research backgrounds of the faculty that are that are teaching in that program. So I show a picture of a Doppler radar here, and there may be certain campuses that have a number of courses that talk about radar meteorology. If that's an interest of yours, then you want to find out if radar meteorology is available to you. Other programs may emphasize applied climatology or hazards, weather hazards, and if that's what you're really interested in, again, you want to ask, do those elective courses exist, or are emphasized within the program, because that becomes an important other part to this equation, that you're going to take a set of courses as electives within the meteorology program, and you want to make sure that they're ones that you have an interest in. These visits, as I say, are important. Why? Because you get to meet faculty, and you get an impression about the institution. And that's important. It's not that you're looking for a warm fuzzy in a sense, but you're wanting to get a feel that these people care and understand where you are, and they want to serve you, and that they're sincere about what they have available. I think one thing you want to know is what are the resources available at the institution. The first bullet I have under that is engaged learning. That's a phrase now that's used a lot in higher education, and what that really means is, are there opportunities for students to work directly with faculty? Like in the top figure on that slide, you see 3 or 4 students around a faculty member. We view that this ability for students to interact, even at the undergraduate level, with a faculty mentor on a number of activities, even outside the classroom, is really critical to the enhancement of the education of students. And so a lot of students get involved in what's called faculty-mentored research opportunities. A lot of universities, you can earn credit for doing this, as well as this idea that you might get paid as a student to participate in a faculty mentor's lab in the research that they do. Also, you will want to ask about internships. Internships are typically experiences that you have working in an environment off campus, generally whether it's at a TV station or the National Weather Service office, or maybe with an energy firm or an insurance company or an agribusiness or a private sector meteorologist. You want to ask, do internships exist on this campus? Will the faculty help me identify these? And furthermore, can I earn credit for doing an internship? That's important. Also, some students may want to study abroad. In other words, they may want to learn about meteorology at a campus, in another country. And so you want to get a feel for if that exists elsewhere. And those opportunities for study abroad are available through your campus. Finally, one of the things you want to think about is this a good fit for you as a student? Every university is different. Every university has positives and negatives. And the thing you want to weigh as you think about this decision with your folks is this a place that I am comfortable in? That if I come here, I can set roots, I can transition here, and I can be successful. And that there are services and people here who are going to help me in my journey through this 4-year education. Some things, other things you might want to talk about, and this is a common question that I often get asked, is what's the job market for your recent graduates? What are they doing now that they've gotten a degree? Well, I've listed 6 different areas where a lot of the students that have gone through our program have ended up over the last 20 years. One of them has been with the federal government and National Weather Service. That tends to be the one that most people focus a lot of attention at. It's very competitive, though, to get there. And in terms of what you can earn if you go in that environment, it's typically you start out somewhere in the $30,000 to $40,000 range in the government when you walk in as a newly trained meteorological intern. Some other federal government agencies that you might want to consider involve the U.S. Geological Survey as well as the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA. They've hired our students as meteorologists before, and so there's things beyond NOAA and the National Weather Service that you may want to consider. Oftentimes in states, there are state agencies that hire meteorologists. In Illinois, we have the Illinois State Water Survey that has hired a number of our meteorology students, as well as there are often Department of Natural Resources within each state, and frequently they want to hire students with a meteorology background because they've got their critical thinking skills and other quantitative background to be successful in those environments. A number of students realize that they want to have much greater knowledge in a very focused area of meteorology, and if so, then those students often consider going on to graduate school. About 10 to 20% of the students in our undergraduate program end up doing that, and that's another area where they go after they finish school here. Private sector meteorology, that's out there. There are many different companies that exist across the country that provide operational forecasts for communities and for different weather-sensitive sectors. And these people often hire meteorologists. A lot of them are involved in environmental science issues, and so you want to ask them what all kinds of opportunities there are there. There is for sure a lot of interest in broadcast meteorology, and that's because a lot of us, that's our first introduction to what meteorology is. And so you want to identify whether students who have graduated from the program have been able to get jobs in broadcast television in the meteorology side. Finally, there's the Air Force, and about one student out of every year or two that graduates from our program walks out of here with a bachelor's degree in meteorology, and they go on into the Air Force and as an officer and are trained there and spend years in the Air Force as a meteorologist. So that's another opportunity for people who walk out of this degree program. Now, final issue that you really got to think about as you make your university selection is costs. Costs range dramatically from one institution to another, from tuition and fees and room and board if you happen to live on campus and so forth. So you want to look into all of these. And the costs of higher education just appear to increase from year to year. There doesn't seem to be a slowdown here. So the idea from my perspective, and I have students now, I have children now that are in college, and so like everybody else, we want to minimize costs. So you want to ask this advisor in the meteorology program, are there scholarships within the department, within the college or the university? And if so, what do I need to do to apply to those scholarships? Frankly, if economics are a major issue or concern, the cost of college, you might want to consider going to a community college for 2 years and getting your general education courses out of the way, as well as the math and physics. And a lot of universities work very closely with community colleges in what's called a 2+2 plan, so that you finish all the needed requirements before you come to the 4-year institution where you finish the last 2 years of your degree. You should think about student loans. About 70 to 80% of students now take out loans. You want to get application materials for those and make sure and fill out a FAFSA as a student in high school so that you can apply for that money. And remember, decisions made by those paying for college are ones that require a lot of reflection and ones that are often have to be discussed away from this advisor in the meteorology program, for sure. Now, let's go to the phase 2. What do we do while we're working on that meteorology degree? In a sense, now you've made your choice about which college you want to go to after the visits. You've narrowed it down to one, you've selected it, and you're all excited. You're part of an incoming class of students. Well, there are a couple points I want to make you aware of right as you begin your college education. One, on average in our country, in the U.S., we graduate about 750 students with a Bachelor of Science degree in meteorology. Now that seems like a pretty small number when you think about how big the United States is and how many students we graduate across the whole country. But I'll be the first one to tell you that of those 750, do they all walk out with a degree and earn a job, walk right into a job? And the answer is no. And so right away, you begin to realize that this is a competitive process to walk into a job when you finish your BS degree in meteorology. So you've got to think about, one, how can I enhance myself through my degree, through the courses I take and the other activities I'm involved with, so that I stand out in a positive way when I get to that point when I graduate. So you've got to really begin to think about that even as you walk in the door. You want to set high goals for yourself. You want to look for ways to expand what you know and the activities you begin to get involved with, so that when you walk out of that, people will look at your resume and say, hey, listen, this individual has done a number of different things that demonstrate a background in certain skills that are important to us when we hire them. So one thing we often talk about when we graduate is that we hand somebody a resume and a cover letter and say, look at me, hire me. Well, something else that you might want to consider developing through your 4 years of education is what we call a portfolio. In this portfolio, and this could be done on a USB drive, is that you save important homework sets or papers that you've written or presentations that you've given in class, PowerPoint presentations, or a capstone presentation, or some important artifact from different courses that you've had in meteorology so that when you go in for an interview, you can sit there and say, let me show you what I've done, so that they have a better idea of it's just not the knowledge you walk away with, because everybody, all those 750 students with a BS degree in meteorology have had very similar sets of courses. It's the other things that you want to sell about yourself that's so important. So you walk into this degree program. What are things you want to do as a freshman right away? Some things that you need to do. One is identify who your undergraduate meteorology advisor is. And you want to seek this person out. You want to introduce yourself to them, knock on the door, introduce yourself, and say, hey, listen, my name is, and I'm a freshman in the meteorology program, and I'd like to sit down and talk a little bit about my career interests, and could you help me identify a way to develop a 4-year academic roadmap of courses? Why is that important? Well, one, we want to get you through in 4 years. As a parent of a child in college, I want them out of their degree program in 4 years. Why? Because every year beyond 4 years costs a lot more money. So the issue is that as you sit down with this advisor and talk about what areas in meteorology you like to focus on for careers, it's important for you to sit down with them also and have them draw out a 4-year academic program. Now, of course, you're going to select certain elective courses that you're interested in, and you'll be in charge of probably identifying those general education courses you'll have to take. But in terms of the required courses for the meteorology program, that individual will be able to help you identify when and what semester you want to take those in so that you get done in 4 years. So that's a really important discussion. Finally, something you ought to get to is what are some things I can do outside the classroom that are going to enhance my portfolio when I graduate from this institution? That's a really important question. So what are things that you can do that can add to your college degree when you walk out? Well, I list 4 things under the first bullet, and these are really, this is not a complete list. This is just a list that I've come up with, and there may be many more that you want to consider or have in mind, or other advisors around the country would sit there and say there are other things to do as well. Well, one thing I'd say is that a lot of these universities are associated with a National Weather Service cooperative weather station. If they are in the community that you live in, go see if you can volunteer to do weather observations. It's a great way for you to learn a little bit about meteorological instruments and the weather observations, and create monthly climate summaries and get a role or an idea of what's involved in the data that we use every day to help develop weather forecasts. Important. Next thing you could think about doing is forecasting for your local college newspaper. Almost every campus has a local newspaper, and almost every one of them puts something in about a weather forecast. If they do, walk into their door and say, hey, listen, is it possible that I can develop forecasts for the paper? Again, they'll probably say yes. You'll have to come to some agreement about how it's done, but that's another opportunity for you. Also, something you want to start talking about with your advisor are there potential internship opportunities, whether on campus or in your community or in the region that you live in. And again, this is something you want to talk to your advisor about. Finally, something that I would also talk about is once you've gotten to know several of the faculty members in your meteorology program, talk to those that you like about doing a research project. Is there an opportunity for you to do an on-hands kind of real-time project where you learn more about meteorological information and get yourself more involved in the process of learning how to do research? Now, no matter whether it's just one of these 4 or any number of other activities that you participate in, I would give you an important rule of thumb here. Something I would tell anybody, even my own children, is whatever you get involved with, whether it's a paid process or a non-paid process, make sure you show up every day and give 120% effort. Why do I say that? Mainly because the people you work with who see you showing up and giving 120% effort will take note of that. And these are people that you're going to come back to, who you're going to ask if they will write you reference letters. And if people work hard, it's easier for us to write really good reference letters for you, whether you're going on to grad school or whether you're looking at a futuristic job, if you've shown a whole lot of effort. So again, as you look at opportunities to enhance your college degree, you want to make sure and give it 120% effort when you do it. Now, How will you separate yourself from those other 749 meteorologists when you graduate? That's an important thing. Well, as I mentioned, you want to start talking about your career interests early. And this is where you can do a lot of work online on the web to look at what's out there. But also, you want to develop this kind of discussion with your undergraduate meteorology advisor. The more they know about what you want to do as a student when you get out of college, the more they can help you identify activities that are going to help you in your four-year program. One thing they'll do is they'll often sit there and say, well, if you have an interest in broadcast meteorology, then why don't you do an internship with the local TV station? And here's the name of the broadcast meteorologist at that station. And so they'll help you focus your efforts toward internships. And what you then have to do is make contact with those individuals at those various different potential internship opportunities and send them needed information. Often, whoever you're going to be working under in an internship is going to require a resume or a cover letter. So one thing you might want to do is as a sophomore or junior in college is develop a resume or cover letter, work with the people on your campus who are paid in your campus life organization and that do student services who are paid to help you develop that resume and cover letter. There are people who can really make them look great. And so I would suggest that you seek help there and get the guidance as you develop those tools. Furthermore, as I talk about internships, I've sort of already mentioned that they're important. They're important because they give you a preview into potential careers. What do you want to do? And the idea here, in terms of the picture that's shown on the right-hand side, is that you want to learn what weather-sensitive decision makers are doing with meteorological information. And if you go into an internship where you're working in a mentored environment, you're going to have a real-world situation where you're going to see where people actually use weather and climatological information to make decisions. And that's fantastic because, one, you begin to be aware of how the material you've learned in your classes really gets used when you get out into a career. Now, hopefully, most institutions will allow you to earn academic credit for an internship experience. You want to check that out with your advisor, see if that's possible. And also, the thing is that, as I mentioned, this internship creates greater insights into the job market. And that is just really what you want this to be. And hopefully, if you go in and give 120% effort or so, who knows, maybe a potential job will open up with this organization you're working with, and they might come back and say, would you like to work with us? Based on your experience in the internship, we'd like to consider you for the job. So an internship can open a lot of doors, and that's something that I would really think about as you move forward in your four-year degree. Now, another issue you want to think about is, are you interested in graduate school? Remember, the coursework that you're going to deal with in this undergraduate program is similar no matter what college or university you go to. What are graduate schools really about? They're to allow you to go and focus more keenly on one area of interest that you have. And there are a lot of different things that we're talking about here, whether it's severe weather forecasting, whether it's climate change, whether it's general circulation models, whether it's working in mesoscale meteorology. Whatever that very focused pursuit that you want to go after, graduate schools give you a lot more background and depth of coursework in that area. So discuss graduate school and your graduate school interests with your advisors and the meteorology faculty members in 1 to 2 years prior to graduation. Why? Based on your interests and where you want to pursue meteorology to the next level, they'll identify specific programs or faculty at specific programs that you might want to contact in terms of graduate school. Things that you got to think about if you're going to graduate school. You've got to take the GRE exam. You've got to line up reference letters, typically from the faculty that you've had coursework from in the meteorology program. And again, just like you did for the undergraduate programs, you want to visit these potential graduate programs and fill out applications. Now, there's going to be some money involved with that. Typically, most applications in the graduate programs cost anywhere from $25 to $100. And taking the GRE exam is also going to cost you some money, just like the ACT exam does for a lot of people. So there are some costs associated with it, but if you really want to further go into depth in a certain area of meteorology or atmospheric sciences, the graduate school is definitely something you want to consider. That discussion is key. All right. Now, your college years are just part of a journey. That's true. 4 years will go by faster than you know. The thing you want to do is keep setting and adjusting both your life and career goals. And that's important, that when you're talking to your advisor, that yes, you're going to talk about courses you can take, but you also want to have this continual discussion about career goals and what do I need to do to be successsul. The more that you know about what is out there, the more likely you'll be successful upon graduation, and that's really key. So you're going to have to be proactive in this process of education and preparing for life after college, and that process requires you to take some initiative. So remember that. Phase 3, preparing for college graduation beyond. Now again, I'm going to repeat some things, but these are things that I think are really important. One thing you really want to do as you prepare for graduation is to start thinking about life after that last exam and the time that you get your diploma. And oftentimes I tell students that they really want to start thinking about this during their junior year. Why? Because again, you're going to take all these required courses in synoptics and atmospheric dynamics. That's required for all students, and no matter what university they're in. But there are going to be elective courses that are out there that you might want to consider. Talk to your advisor about what those elective courses are and when they are offered, and find out if there are any prerequisites for those courses, because you've got to find out if you can just walk into them or if you've got to take courses prior to walking into them. So you're going to have to do some homework here. Your advisors ought to be able to help you do that. Furthermore, by the time you're a sophomore or junior, you might want to consider whether you want to also complete a minor. Now, what is a minor? In most universities, a minor is where you take 5 or 6 courses, about maybe 18 to 20 credit hours in a focused program like math. You can minor in math. You can minor in computer science. You can minor in economics or business. And the idea is that this minor, you'll major in meteorology, but this minor is something that you have a specific interest in. I really suggest, I often tell students that they ought to have enough opportunities with elective courses to complete a minor if they have an interest in it. These minors or certificate programs will give you a leg up when you get out of college. It's another thing that shows up on your transcript and can help you when you're looking for a job. So things you want to do here is look at these opportunities to complete a minor. And your advisor will be the kind of person that will help you work with other programs on your campus to do this. Now, the value of close ties with your faculty, advisors, and meteorology faculty, again, you don't have to become best friends with these individuals. That's not important. But they need to know who you are and what you want to accomplish, because the key thing here is that they will help you identify internship opportunities, as I've talked about before. But more importantly, these people, based on their work and their research and their activities of going to professional meetings, they know the people in the weather climate community, and these people can lead you to potential jobs. Importantly, unlike other fields like in business and engineering, where companies will come to campus and students will dress up in suits and go and interview for jobs, meteorology majors have to be proactive. They've got to go out and search for jobs. You can't sit there on your rear end and wait for someone to come to your dorm room or your apartment and say, I hear you're a meteorology major, you're going to graduate in a couple weeks, and we have this job opening for you. You're going to have to be proactive and look for these jobs, and it's going to take some effort and some thought on your own. And again, starting this out in your junior year is an important first step. One thing that I would suggest, no matter what age you are, whether, again, you're a student in the age group of a traditional from 18 to 22-year-old, or whether you're a non-traditional student, is that you want to sit there and join either the American Meteorological Society and or the National Weather Association. These are our two professional societies that involve a lot of the people who are career meteorologists. And these are important ways for you to develop, especially leadership skills. One thing you'll find out is that oftentimes there's going to be a local chapter of the AMS or NWA on your campus. Get involved with these local chapters. By your junior or senior year, You should try to become an officer in these chapters because, again, this shows leadership. We want to see those kind of skills developed in students. One thing you might want to consider as a senior is attend or participate in a regional or national meeting. Again, your faculty advisors can help you identify what those opportunities are, but in the AMS, for example, if you have an interest in attending the annual meeting, which occurs in January every year, there's money that the AMS has set aside to help students offset those costs associated with travel to those meetings. So it's something you want to think about. Become active in one of these professional societies. Be a member on a committee. Again, by doing this, it means that you want to give something back. And that's a big part of whatever we do in life. We want to give back. We want to serve others. And furthermore, through this service, you demonstrate leadership. And this is a key skill and character aspect that we really want to see in all of our students when they leave universities. But I would say this is really critical in terms of a meteorology major when they graduate from college. Finally, by being members of these one or both of these associations, is that you will receive the journals that are associated with these professional societies, and these will allow you to be a lifelong learner. That's something we really want to stress, is that the minute you finish your four-year degree doesn't mean that's the last time you read anything about meteorology. It's just the beginning. And these journals will have articles in them that will give you an insight as to where are we, what's the state of where we are in meteorology, and where are we going to be going in the future. And that's a really important part of your continual development. Remember, it's not just knowledge, but skills. Now, again, you're going to, in your four-year degree program, you're going to take a lot of required courses and elective courses, which you're going to learn a lot about what meteorology is all about, and that's important. But as important as that knowledge is, because everyone's going to walk out, all 750 who are going to graduate with a BS degree in meteorology in the United States at some point are going to own that knowledge. But the thing that's going to also have to be developed are the skills, whether it's critical thinking, creativity, communication, or problem solving, or technical skills associated with working with a computer and feeling comfortable working with a computer. These are things you're going to want to develop as an undergraduate student in a meteorology program. And you're not only going to want to develop them, you're going to want to be able to go into that interview with somebody and be able to show them these skills via the different things that are in your portfolio, whether it's a paper you've done or a research project or a presentation or this idea that you worked with an external weather-sensitive decision maker to solve a problem that they're facing, or a computer program that you've developed that helps you forecast the weather. So the key here is that we want to see you walk out with both a mix of knowledge and skills, and that over time that mix will continue to increase as you spiral up that black line. Now let's think a little bit about your job search. Well, the first suggestion I can make is throw out a wide net. You don't want to just think of yourself as a meteorologist and that's the only place I'm going to end up is with a title of meteorologist. A lot of meteorologists go work as hydrologists or environmental sciences. Many work in the transportation systems, whether it's on the ground or in the air. Some work in markets, whether it's in the energy market, whether it's natural gas or electricity, or in the agricultural markets. And those agricultural markets and energy markets are worldwide now. So we have to think about it in those terms. We also should think about insurance. Now, why do I list these five? And there are many more beyond just these five, is that all of them are weather sensitive, and all of them have to manage weather risks. Risks associated with bad weather or good weather or severe weather. They need to know what those risks are and need to know how frequently these events occur and what the magnitudes could be, because they are developing decision support tools for others. And so having a meteorologist in any one of these areas is a key part to that decision support tool. Important. So remember, your title may not say meteorologist on the door, but that's okay. Sometimes just getting in the door is what's really important in the process of a job search. Keep enhancing your portfolio. Take additional courses even after you graduate. That's important because they'll fine-tune, especially in the computer science side, fine-tune these skills that you need to continue to use. Continue with the professional development, working with the AMS or the NWA. These will help you further develop your skills. Stay abreast of where the field is, because again, you need to know where contributions are being made. Where are we at the cutting edge of what we know today? Work and have access to today's and tomorrow's technology. You definitely want to be able to feel comfortable with the computer in everything you do today, for sure. So, let's sum up some of the things we've talked about. Again, after 20 years of working in a department, primarily as an advisor and an instructor in the meteorology undergraduate program, what are some things I've learned? One, most students walk into these environments with a passion for meteorology. And that passion for meteorology will sustain you through difficult coursework. And I will tell you right now that the coursework associated with becoming a meteorology is as tough as it is for any of the other physical sciences or even engineering. Set goals for yourself and work toward them. You want to make sure you're at the top of your game. You know, the idea here is that we're looking for people who walk out of these programs that not only have excellent grades, but have developed great skills. Important. Keep active and involved. Again, get involved with the meteorology programs, stay involved with the AMS, become that citizen scientist by being in the CoCoRaHS observation network, or taking on other responsibilities in your communities as they deal with meteorology. You're going to be an expert. You're going to have the ability to contribute to discussions locally about what you know in terms of meteorology. Reflect on your experiences. Everything you do in life, you should be able to step back and reflect and say, was that a positive or negative contribution to who I am? Continue to do that in your career. Be patient when looking for employment. Those opportunities may not just show up right there and then. You've got to be willing to turn those rocks over. It's like looking for a piece of gold. You may be in that creek for a long time, but you know, if you find the right piece of gold, the right job, that's fantastic. And as I mentioned before, continue to sharpen your skills, whether they are communication skills, technology skills, critical thinking skills. Those are the things that again, are going to put you in a greater position when you walk out of school and as you go beyond that point. And finally, remember it's a journey. The journey that you're on is different than anybody else's. And don't compare yourself to other people. The thing is that you want to put yourself in the best position to be successful and to have an opportunity to be a meteorologist and practice weather the rest of your life. So at this point, I say thank you and open up to questions.
Dave, thank you. That was very informative, and I think a lot of folks will benefit not only from listening today, but listening to this in the future. We've got some questions coming in right now, so why don't we go ahead and take a few, and if you guys do have a question, type your question in, and we'll try to get to those in the next half an hour. There's someone was asking here, Betty from Washington wants to know, do teachers have opportunities to perform internships at any National Weather Service offices?
Do teachers? I would assume so. I think, well, one, when I say internship, typically internships are viewed as a curricular activity. In other words, you get course credit for it. But yes, you could probably contact your local National Weather Service office and say, is it possible that I could once a week come in and you know, be in a mentored environment where I job shadow just to see what a meteorologist does. I think most offices would sit there and say that there are opportunities for that. But again, you need to contact that National Weather Service office, explain what you're doing, and sit there and identify why you think this would be an important thing for you to do to enhance your career and your ability to teach students about meteorology.
Okay, here's another one. For Patricia writes, what type of hours do meteorologists work at the entry level?
Oh, fantastic question. Oh my gosh, and I forgot about that one. Well, it sort of depends on where you go. If you work in the National Weather Service, you go in as a forecaster, as an intern, you work what's called a rotating shift. In other words, you would work several days, maybe from 8 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon, and then have a couple days off, and then work the next shift for 4 or 5 days from 4 o'clock until maybe midnight, and then take a few days off, and then come back and work the next shift from midnight until 8 a.m. That's what a rotating shift is. And in the National Weather Service, people who are forecasters in that environment work what's called a rotating shift in terms of forecasting the weather. Now, in the private sector, most private sector environments, whether it's with an aviation group or whether it's just an operational group in a community or in a city, will have operational forecasters working a steady shift, whether that shift is always going to be during the day or at night, but they'll keep them on that shift. It's not rotating. So again, that just depends. Now, there are some jobs that are purely 9 to 5. But in terms of weather forecasting, if that's what you really want to do, because the weather is 24/7, you're going to end up in a lot of environments working weekends, working days, working holidays. And so one of the great shocks that a lot of students have when I sit down and they say, oh, I want to work for the National Weather Service, and I'll sit there and say, oh, do you understand this rotating shifts, and you may have to work Thanksgiving, or you may have to work Valentine's Day or the 4th of July or some other holiday. They'll sit there and say, oh my gosh, I thought I'd get those days off. No, the National Weather Service runs 24/7, 365 days a year.
Dave, here's a question from Kathy. She writes, what are your feelings on non-traditional students over 40 attempting this kind of change? Is it better to keep the current day job and just enjoy the weather station in the backyard? That's an interesting question.
That's a tough question. Mainly because I've had a number of students or potential students, individuals who have an interest in meteorology who've asked me that question. And usually that discussion requires a lot of reflective back and forth thought between both a faculty member in a university and the non-traditional student who's considering coming back. A couple things you got to consider is you've got the non-traditional student who's got a job, maybe working in the suburbs or working in a city, is making a certain amount of money each year and has become used to a certain quality of life. If you go back to school, one thing you got to ask are the courses only offered between 8 and 5? If they are, that means if you're really going to become a meteorology student, then you're going to have to go back and you can't do this part-time. You're going to have to probably give up your day job and do this full-time if you're going to get this degree. Most meteorology programs don't have online courses available for the entire program. Some do have some online courses, but not most. And most don't teach classes at night. So you have to be aware that in a sense of, are you willing to give up what you already have? And that's an important question, because I'll be the first one to tell you there's a lot of uncertainty about whether you'll walk out, even after finishing a degree in meteorology, whether you'll walk out and will be able to find a job in 6 months after you've graduated. And if you do, again, like I said, you walk in the National Weather Service, you may start anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000 a year. If you walk in as a broadcast meteorologist into a local, non-urban, big urban TV station, you're probably going to make somewhere in the area of maybe $18,000 to $25,000 a year. If you walk into a private sector firm, you might make a little bit more than that, maybe $30,000 to $40,000. But again, you really want to have a realistic view that in terms of the amount of money you're going to make may be a major step down. And so your comment about, well, maybe I'll just remain a citizen scientist. I can become a member as a citizen scientist. I can become a member of the American Meteorological Society. I can receive the journals of the AMS and learn about meteorology and be active in my community in those discussions, because discussions such as climate change are important ones, and we want to have people who are educated on and have a background knowledge of what the science associated with climate change, so that when that discussion comes up, they can contribute to that discussion. So I think there are a lot of opportunities to be that citizen scientist, and especially in meteorology, to have enough formal background to really enjoy it as a hobby. So that decision about whether to go on and get that undergraduate degree in meteorology is a pretty difficult one. And sort of the last comment that I'll make to that is that depending on the undergraduate degree you had, how much backfill you have to do in terms of the math and sciences before you even get into the meteorology courses is something you'd want to consider. Oftentimes what I tell somebody who, let's say, got a degree in economics or history or political sciences, and are thinking about coming back to be meteorologists, I'll sit there and say, how much math did you have in college? And they'll sit there and say, not much. I'll say, well, then why don't you go to the community college nearby and take Calculus 1. Find out if you, or take pre-calc and then Calculus 1. See if you can manage that math today. Because frequently, the students who literally are not retained in an undergraduate meteorology program are not retained because of the lack of passion for meteorology. Is they can't get over the math hurdle. It's a pretty significant math hill you got to climb. You got to take Calculus 1, 2, 3, and differential equations, and as well as a 2-course sequence in calculus-based physics, computer science programming courses, and statistics courses. So it's the kind of coursework that you're talking about in the meteorology program, even before you really get into the meteorology classes, is pretty quantitative and represents a major mountain for a lot of people who are thinking about coming back.
Okay, Dave, I just let the folks out there, we're at the top of the hour right now. We're going to try to go and get a lot of more questions, and if Dave, you can stick around maybe another half an hour, we're getting a lot of questions coming in right now. It's some really interesting ones. Jeff in Idaho says, how important is the broadcast seal from the AMS when pursuing a career as a broadcast meteorologist?
Well, I would sit there and say I would get a seal from either the AMS or the NWA. One, it's an added credential for you, especially as you think about going into that field. And that you know, it's one of those kind of things that a TV station can put that seal up on the screen when you're about ready to forecast. It creates to an external audience, which is primarily the public sector. It creates for them this idea of that you have a background and a knowledge in meteorology that is at a certain level of excellence, and that's important for a lot of TV stations. So yes, I'd sit there and say that that's a worthy thing to go after if you had the ability to do such a thing, for sure.
Jan writes in and wants to know, on a 1 to 10 scale, how difficult would you say it is for a meteorologist to secure employment?
Wow.
Maybe a 1 to 20 scale.
Well, in my, Henry, it's a great question, you know, and I would tell it's all dependent on the student. This is the thing that I would, a lot of the ability for a student to obtain a job when they graduate from college really depends on how much they do before they get out. I've had situations where I've had a student walk into my office at spring break of their senior year, and these students can be A students. They've earned A's in most of their undergraduate coursework, and they're really top students, and they'll sit there 7 or 8 weeks before they're going to graduate and say, what do I do now? And if they haven't sat there and really talked about their career interests or have pursued an internship or have done other things that have enhanced their portfolio in terms of extracurricular activities, then even though they've got these incredible grades, they're not likely going to find a job right when they walk out. It really is this idea that if a student's going to be successful, if a student walks in and has this knowledge and has done well in coursework, but has also developed his or her skills, these critical thinking, communication skills, technology skills, the combination of those two things are going to sell them. Students that have what I call a great package when they graduate are going to be more likely to find a job. Now, we're on that scale from 1 to 10. If you had this great package and you walk out of here, I would sit there and say it's still rough. I'd still put it at about a 5. But if you don't have a great package, I put you down at about a 2. And that's just because it's a very competitive market. There aren't a lot of jobs that open up all the time. The job opportunities are often far and few between. So I'd be the first one to tell you that if you really want to do this, if you want to be a meteorologist, that you have to put in quality time thinking about career decisions and those internship and those other engaged learning activities while you're in college, because those are going to be critical to your success when you get out, for sure.
Dave, here's a question from a NIU graduate from 1973. He said his career took him away from meteorology, and as he nears retirement, he wants to know if there's volunteer opportunities in meteorology that he can sue. And I'll tell you first thing there, his name is Mike from Illinois. Mike, CoCoRaHS is one to put on the top of your list. We definitely need help around the country, volunteer leaders with CoCoRaHS. But there you go, Dave.
Well, you just hit on CoCoRaHS as one. Again, the idea is that if you want to get more involved, there's probably a American Meteorological Society chapter near you. I know, like in Chicago, there's one. There's also one out here at Northern Illinois University on our campus. So whether you're near a campus or not, there may be a chapter, a local or regional chapter that you may want to get involved with. Again, I think having membership in that environment is important. Furthermore, I think making people aware in your high schools and other educational environments or libraries that you have this expertise in meteorology, they may want to bring you in as a speaker. The idea is that probably 3 or 4 times a year I go into the K through 12 environment and give talks to whether it's 5th graders or high school students about meteorology, and that again brings a lot of satisfaction for a lot of people, the idea that you have this knowledge and that you can convey it to others. I think another thing you could think about is participating even at the national level in some of these organizations, because given the fact that you have a lot of experience and background, you may want to share that. You know, there are a lot of universities that will go back to their alumni and say, hey, listen, can you come back and help our students understand what kind of skills they need to have to be successful. Furthermore, the important thing here is that you can tell a story about your journey, your life, your career that might have involved some aspects of meteorology or not, and that's important for students to understand, that they, even though they get a degree in meteorology, they may never end up being truly called what we would title a meteorologist in their field. So again, I think there are opportunities that are out there. I think you have to be flexible to them. You might even sit there and say, gosh, I could go back to my community college and get or maybe not community college, go back to my a university, get a master's degree, and go teach introductory level meteorology courses at a community college. So there are options for you there for sure if you want to do it.
And someone also suggested they look into Skywarn. They could use somebody with the Skywarn groups with some experience, and that's very helpful out there.
Exactly. Thank you, Henry.
Sure. James writes that his son is pursuing a degree in earth sciences, and what core courses does he need to take to qualify for a meteorology position? As long as we're on that question, Don writes in and wants to know how important are computer programming skills. So two of these can kind of be answered hopefully in the same question.
Well, I can't say enough about computers programming skills. Most, it depends on the job that you end up in, how important having computer programming skills are. I would say that it's one of those 4 or 5 really important skills that I'd want to walk out with. Do you have to do a minor in computer sciences? No. The National Weather Service and AMS require that you take at least 1 course in computer programming. Typically, folks that work in the government have gotten that in Fortran programming. Others take C++, but there are a lot of different languages. The key here is to feel comfortable and flexible in terms of the languages you're going to work in with a computer. In terms of the degree and the requirements, for a meteorologist, here are some very basic ones you got to think about. As I mentioned earlier, you got to take these 4 courses in math: Calculus 1, Calculus 2, Calculus 3, differential equations. You got to take this 2-course sequence in calculus-based physics. You need a computer programming course. You need a statistics course. You need to also think about taking, in terms of the meteorology program, you got to have you got to have 2 courses worth of synoptic meteorology. You got to have 2 courses worth of dynamic meteorology. You got to have a physical meteorology course. I would suggest taking a course in remote sensing, whether it's in radar meteorology or in satellite meteorology. Take those. A course in climatology would be useful, and a course in hydrology for sure would be useful as well. So there are a lot of required courses that you have to get a meteorology degree, and then there are a lot of others that I would say would enhance your skill set when you walk out. And again, those courses will be listed with the federal government or with the American Meteorological Society, so you should look into that. Also, take a chemistry course if you can at the college level. That will help you as well.
Somebody, in regards to that question, want to know what is synoptic and dynamic meteorology. I guess they're not sure.
Well, synoptic
what those
really
are.
is synoptic is when we talk about the scale, global scale. when we get down to synoptic scale, we're talking about frontal movement, low pressure areas, high pressure areas, and the idea of fronts moving, warm and cold fronts and so forth, and weather systems that move across the country, things that we identify on a weather map. That's the synoptic scale level that we're talking about. So frequently there'll be courses that focus at the synoptic scale, which is, again, weather systems that move in the mid-latitudes across our country from generally west to east. And then there's also the mesoscale, where you're focusing at severe weather level convective-based systems, MCCs, MCSs, mesoscale convective systems or complexes, and the severe weather associated with them, whether it's derechos or tornadoes or hail or high winds or heavy rainfall. But the dynamic courses are really associated with the idea that we can put equations, use these high-level math skills to put equations to how our atmosphere works, because all of our computer models that forecast the weather are built on all these equations associated with the first law of thermodynamics, second law, ideal gas equation. All these different equations come into play, and these are things that you will use in the dynamics courses to understand how the atmosphere really works in 4 dimensions: the x, y at the surface, x being east-west, y being north-south, z being the height through the atmosphere, and all these things change over time. So it's a pretty complex atmosphere that we work in, and as we try to model our atmosphere and these vertical motions and horizontal motions, we've got to have pretty complex math to do that, for sure.
So, another example somebody had written too is how calculus is used in weather forecasting, their question. I think you kind of just nailed that one right there.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be the first one to tell you that when you create a weather forecast, let's say for the next 12 hours or 24 hours, are you actually doing calculus in your chair to come up with that forecast? The answer is no. But you need to realize that the model guidance that is provided to you by these different models that we run in our federal government and in the European bloc countries as well as others, all these models are based on using high-level math equations to do this. And so, again, as you think about day-to-day forecasting, whether in a National Weather Service office or even in a broadcast meteorology environment, are you going to be using calculus skills day in and day out? The answer is no, but you need to understand that the calculus and the differential equations are important in terms of the base equations of how our atmosphere fundamentally works.
Tim asks a question. He wants to know, is it wise for a career-changing perspective for a student with a non-meteorology undergrad background to go right into graduate school of meteorology, or is it better to first go back for a second undergrad in meteorology? And I could see where you would need those classes.
That's a really great question, and I face that quite frequently with a number of people who even apply to our geography graduate program here at Northern Illinois University with the idea that they're going to walk out and be a meteorologist. I think a lot of it depends on where you got your undergraduate degree, what program. If it isn't in physical sciences like physics or chemistry or, let's say, engineering or math, then I think it's going to be a lot harder for you to walk into a graduate program in meteorology and that they would accept you. Because, again, to be successful at the graduate level, you've got to have had this math, these math courses and these physics courses, and to be, I think, successful walking in. Again, I had that through my engineering undergraduate degree, but if someone came in and said, I have a degree in political sciences or communications, I'm going to sit there and say, you need to get a second Bachelor of Science degree in meteorology. And for most students, that means that they're looking at about a 2.5 to 3 year process to doing that. Because, again, depending on how much math they had in their first undergraduate degree, they may have to do a lot of backfill in terms of those calculus courses before they jump into taking meteorology courses, especially at the junior level, for sure.
And David writes us too. He wanted to know if it was okay to get a physics degree as an undergrad and then go on to graduate, and I think covers a lot of similar courses with the physics degree. I think
you'd be fine. From my own experience of again, I did both of my master's and PhD level work at the atmospheric science program out at Colorado State, and I believe that one of the students that walked in with the program when I did actually got his undergraduate degree in physics and was able to come in. So I don't think physics would limit you at all because, again, in a physics program, you typically have to take that upper-level math to deal with the upper-level physics for sure.
Glorianne from Puerto Rico listening in today, and she wanted to know what are the best universities in the nation to earn a degree in meteorology, I guess, or the top universities. And I guess this is subjective. I'm sure we all have different ones we could pick out and so forth. Without getting you in trouble, Dave, can you recommend a few?
I'm going to be real honest here and say that I think that depends on the fit for the student, and more importantly, at the undergraduate level, what are the elective courses, or where would the student like to emphasize his or her elective courses so that they build up a greater background in a certain part of a certain aspect of meteorology? Because again, every undergraduate program teaches to the same basic courses that are required by the federal government and the EMS. That's essential. If they don't do that, you don't even want to attend those institutions. But as long as they give you the fundamentals to walk out and get a job with the federal government, you're good. The next question has to be, in my mind, where do you want to emphasize your elective courses? And that's another part of that equation. Because I think at that level, you'll find out through the discussions when you visit these campuses, you'll say, gosh, this campus really has a lot of emphasis, whether it's in cloud modification, or weather modification, or in radar meteorology, or in climatology, or in hazards, or in remote sensing, and you'll find out through the discussions with the advisor what the emphasis is. And that's really the important question, because I think, from my mind, there are a lot of great institutions all across this country. I could list them, and we could be here for an hour talking about each one of them. And I really don't want to do that because I don't think it's fair to the audience at this point in time to sit there and say that there's a top 5. I think at the graduate level, I would sit there and say that there are probably 10 to 15 institutions at the graduate level that are really top-notch, but I'm not going to talk about the undergraduate at this point.
Dave, David from Georgia, Brian writes in, and he said there's a couple of universities have applied meteorology degrees. What is that? Is it much different than a meteorology degree?
Well, that's a good question. A lot of people call degrees at the undergraduate level, or even at the graduate level, some departments call them meteorology degrees, some call them atmospheric science degrees, some people might say applied meteorology. I think the idea is that no matter what they call it, you need to go in and say, okay, do you teach the courses that are fundamentally required for me to walk out of here and get a job in the National Weather Service if I wanted that? That's the first key question. Now, the use of the word applied might mean that they teach a lot of courses, a lot of their elective courses focus at different applications of meteorology, whether it's to the water resource side, or to the energy side, or the agricultural side, or the transportation side. What they're saying is that potentially they're going to train you as a meteorologist, but they want you to learn how to apply that meteorological knowledge in different weather-sensitive sectors.
Okay, and here's another one here. Chris is wondering if you could talk a little about distance learning, internet degrees, especially for those who are looking to making a career out of meteorology. Well, are there any out there? Is there?
Right now, I don't think there's any. And again, this is where I'm not totally, my knowledge is not strong, but I would say that I don't believe there's anywhere that you can get a 4-year Bachelor of Science degree in meteorology online. I don't think it exists. However, there are certain institutions that do have certificate programs where you can take certain courses online and toward a certificate in meteorology. Now, is a certificate the same as a Bachelor of Science degree? No. And buyer beware, when you look at these certificate programs, is to understand what are the prerequisites for these certificate programs. If these certificate programs do not require calculus or physics, then you have to understand that you're taking a set of courses as part of a certificate program that are not quantitatively very difficult, and thus are not meeting the standards of the National Weather Service or the American Meteorological Society.
Well, Dave, thank you so much. We're going to, any other questions that come in, we'll have we'll send them to you, and you can email some folks on that. That would be great. Thanks for taking the time to be with us today. I think hopefully a lot of inspiring young meteorologists out there will have some direction and be able to take some of this advice to figure out what they want to do and how to pursue that degree. So again, we appreciate being part of our webinar today.
Well, I'm honored to be asked, and thanks, Henry. It's great to work with you.
No, we really appreciate it. And Dave's a good friend of ours, so we'll see you down the road at future meetings, Dave. So as folks out there, if you're still on the webinar, if you would take the survey today at the end of the webinar, again, it's just a couple of questions. Really helps us out with evaluation. We're going to sign off for now. We want to ask you guys to, again, join us next month for our CoCoRaHS Weather Talk webinar. That'll be on October 18th, and that'll feature Jan Curtis of the NRCS. He's going to talk about one of his favorite subjects, and that's the Northern Lights. And Jan has spent some time up in Fairbanks, has great pictures, some great information on that, the Aurora Borealis. So if you'll come back, we'll have something on the web here shortly. We'll also have this broadcast available in the next day or two up for you guys to watch on our YouTube channel. Again, thanks for joining us, and we wish all of you a good day. Goodbye.